Welcome back to the Dividend Diplomats YouTube channel, guys. You got your boys here, the Bert, the Hurt, and Lanny, guys, and we're bringing back to you why this ETF is better than SCHD, baby.
Ooh, smash that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up. Oh, we love battles in here. SCHD, I've been buying 4 shares of it every single week. It is one of the dividend community's favorite stocks. I mean, the favorite ETFs, but it's not the only ETF. In fact, a lot of people have been asking to see Hogan versus The Rock in the ring and see which one we think is going to come out better as the better performing ETF.
Guys. No disrespect to the SCHD shareholders out there. So if you buy SCHD like Bert, kudos to you guys grabbing that yield, getting that growth. No argument on the 5-year growth, over 56% return, guys, as we'll get into the metrics. But you know your boy here has been buying Vanguard's high dividend yield ETF, VYM, for the better part of 4 straight years. Every single week, the blood, the sweat, the tears into buying my Vanguard ETF and VYM. And today I'm going to tell you this is why VYM can be better than SCHD. Not to say one is not a good investment, but just saying why I think VYM at this point might be the better ETF versus SCHD.
Ooh.
Can't wait for the bring on the fighting comments below, guys. Just bring it. So we're gonna dive in, obviously, to the performance. We'll dive into the yield. We're gonna look really at the ETF itself, because we all know SHD's dividend growth typically is stronger. They're long term, quote unquote, because both ETFs haven't been around that long. VYM a little bit longer than SCHD. But SCHD's got really good dividend growth. So guys, it's
Yeah.
great. And again, VYM though and SCHD are two different ETFs, even though they're kind of very much compared to each other quite often. But when we go through them, really the composition of the ETFs itself, you'll see why they're different, just because nothing's really apples to apples at all, except for maybe their net asset value. Um, but let's dive in, Bert.
Yeah. Let's jump right in because this is going to be a fun one here. And we started with we said we're going to start here with the performance. Do we want to start performance, Lanny, or we want to start background? Let's
Let's do performance.
all right.
Let's
Let's
just go
go.
down.
Yeah, let's go through this because we're going to look at this from the year to date, 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year performance. So it's what are you doing for me now? What have you done for me lately? And what have you done for me over a long stretch?
Yeah, so year to date right now, VYM is somehow up 6.24% this year for a dividend ETF, which is definitely exceeding an expectation simply because the S&P 500 is up, around 11% ish, give or take. So VYM being right there, up a decent amount this year is nice to see. How about SCHD this year?
Yeah, comparatively, SCHD, it's just kind of been stuck in the mud, Lanny. It hasn't been able to move. It hasn't been able to do much. It's up just under 2% year to date. So again, hasn't really moved too much for SCHD at 1.84.
And Bert and I, we were talking, could that be when we get into the change of the SCHD holdings, could
Yeah.
that be a reason why, depending on when they turned over some of their stocks?
Yeah,
Uh,
because they do that rebalancing in the middle of March. So I think it was March 18th is when they shook up the portfolio. They changed up the top 10. So obviously, if even though the top 10 may be performing on their year-to-date basis, SCHD didn't pick up the benefit from the full year-to-date if they didn't own them before March 18th.
yeah, no, I mean, exactly. But we get into the 1 year. Let's
Yeah,
date
let's
it
stretch it
back to
out. Let's
2024 from May. Vanguard's VYM is up a nice 17.4%. 17.4% return for VYM over the last 52 weeks.
Yeah, SCHD only up 12.15%. So less than if they have, oh my goodness, I can't talk right now. VIM is performing much better on the 1 year front too.
this is where things get interesting, is when you go back to May of 2021, to May of now, 3 years ago. Right now 11.5% is the return for VYM, and
And
then you got a SCHD.
Yeah, SCHD crosses it here because they're up 12.24% over the last 3 years too. So they're performing a little bit better.
And somebody fact check us there, because it's hard to find any investment place that actually shows you like, oh, hey, here's the 3-year chart. So I just kind of use some like closing stock prices, I think on Y chart. So you guys let us know if that sounds about right. And then this is really where you start to see the separation at the 5-year mark. Because remember, back in 2018, 2019, SCHD was firing on all cylinders. VYM only up 44.65% over a 5-year term.
Yeah, SCHD is up 56.64% over that 5-year run as well.
Oof.
Yeah.
Just on fire, just balmy.
Yeah, so that's what's interesting here when you're looking through it. VYM's crushing SCHD in the short term. What have they been doing lately? VYM, from a performance standpoint, has just been performing better than SCHD. It's a fact. You can see it in the numbers here. Over that 5-year stretch, though, for people that have owned both of them for 5 years, SCHD has provided a higher return.
Yeah, now what'll be interesting when it comes to these returns, guys, I think in 2022, VYM dropped less than SCHD because that was a down year. 2023, I think VYM slightly nudged out SCHD. 2024, obviously nudging out SCHD. It'll be funny when you have more time and some of that higher performing time starts dropping from SCHD. So I think, this kind of pace keeps up, you might start to see, closer to maybe the end of this year, you might start to see the 3-year clips for VYM. And in that 5-year performance, you might start to see this shift start happening.
For sure, especially because SCHD hasn't been performing well lately. So VYM is going to catch up to it for sure. That's a great point.
It's all perspective, again, long term, both ETFs are great. 56% for SHD, 11% on average returns there. It's awesome. VYM, hey, you're collecting over 8 percent returns, almost 9% returns per year. It's like, hey, you guys are doing fine owning both. But then when you get into the composition, this is where it's very funny. I mean, this is where you really start to go, okay, they're not really apples to apples, because VYM owns 557 stocks. So the concentration is much smaller for VYM.
Yeah, SCHD has 103, and they famously have less holdings than everybody else. So that's what makes it really interesting. They're very selective.
Wasn't there the one ETF that you just reviewed that had maybe a little bit less than 103?
Yeah. Yeah, it only had 84, which was even less. So it's like, whole point of the ETF is to spread it out. You're not concentrated. So that was interesting.
Yeah, so then that kind of speaks to the turnover, right?
Yeah.
Because VYM turns over their stocks 5%. So their portfolio turns over 5%. I'm going to pause there because that's still 20 to 30 stock positions.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
That is true. Yeah, it's a good point as well. SCHD obviously has a much higher turnover. It was shockingly 29.47%. So nearly 30% of its portfolio is turning over, which numbers wise, to your point, Lanny, is similar to VYM. There are just less holdings. SCHD, though, does it by design with that annual rebalancing. And we pulled it up here. What were some of the things? Every year they look at it. They need companies that have at least 10 years of payment, have minimum market cap balances. Individual stocks are capped at 4% at the time of the rebalance. Obviously, if a stock appreciates, it's going to cross 4%. And sector maximums are 25%. So just by the nature of how they pick stocks and the formulas they use, you're going to have some turnover to make sure it's in balance and meeting the investment objectives of SCHD.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, both probably have the same number of stocks that they're changing and turning over, but just spread out in VYM versus, hey, if some of these rebalancing moves don't pan out, then it's going to impact performance, which, Bert and I think that might be the case right now for SCHD based on the timing of that rebalance.
For sure.
Net assets let's get into price to book. Price to book, they're pretty much the same according to both respective websites. VYM's at 2.6 times their book value right now.
Yeah, and
And what's their
SCHD's at
PhD?
3. Yeah, they're 3.07. So you're right. They're not that far off.
No, no. I mean, I think they're pretty much neck and neck there, but net assets is even the closest thing, right now to the actual net asset value of the fund. Again, you're taking market value, you're taking all that junk out. 65 billion in net assets for VYM.
Yeah, and SCHD 55 billion. So again, two massive funds. That's not, we'd be concerned if one was 200 billion and 10 billion. You couldn't really say they're apples to apples, but yeah, they're in the same ballpark.
Now, currently the trailing 12 months using the last 3 quarters from 2023 and the first quarter of this year. If you remember, VYM announced very early in March, and their yield actually kind of dropped because the March dividend 24 versus 23 was less. I'm expecting actually the big catch up in June. So mark me down on this video, Bert, and everybody watching. We'll see what June actually brings for VYM.
Can't wait.
It's gonna be on the timing of that too. But I think we did the analysis and they did it, very early for VYM in Q1. Kind of historically they do that though. But the trailing 12 months, this is where SCHD is really going to pounce on them. But VYM's yield only 2.86% on the trailing 12.
Yeah, and SCHD's yield is 3.42%. So that's obviously why people have gravitated to SCHD to pick up that extra margin there on the yield, the extra 0.6%.
And right now, again, they both have the same expense ratios. Let's just get that out.
Yeah.
6 basis points. So boom, that's there. That's the tightest metric right there, that they're both similar there. But what's interesting is when you think about like undervaluation, is SCHD more undervalued than if they haven't grown as much this year? Maybe that's something to consider. If you're owning both VYM and SCHD, maybe you go, okay, I'm going to do more SCHD based on performance. So when SCHD underperforms VYM, you add to SCHD. Then maybe when that time turns, then you add to VYM. Maybe that's a philosophy. Maybe that's something that people are doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. So overall, they're both interesting funds. There's nothing, I think too, like you said, you can't go wrong with either. But Lanny, let's answer the question. Your thoughts. What do you think between VYM versus SCHD?
So why I think VYM is better than SCHD is really just the consistency, the kind of lower volatility because of the concentration, the turnover. It's, not to say you want it to be boring, because you guys all know how much news SCHD attracts. Oh, the rebalancing. Oh, it's like the NBA, playoffs, or, when something like, do you want to be in the news? Like, do you guys want to have conversations, about something? So just think
Hold on.
about
I have my comparison for SCHD in a second. Once you're done,
it.
I'll let you finish your thought, but I'll explain my thought here.
So in the end, I think that's why I like and I'm stuck with VYM. I know everybody, while I was buying it in 2020, 2021, when SHD may have been outperforming, but again, I didn't hear, only people that could say things in 2022, 2023, and 2024 is, oh, SHD's yield is better. It's like, yeah, okay, but VYM's performance now is better. So I don't really hear that anymore. So I don't ever say like, oh, look, why are you buying? I will never comment, why are you buying SCH?
No, they're
I
both
just
great.
think it's very funny when you get it on the other side.
Yeah, because I think first off, it's your money. That's why we keep looking for alternative. We keep doing videos saying, like, what are all the fund options? It's whatever one ticks for you. In SCHD, like for me, I like it. I enjoy it. Like, but VYM's also great too. I could have easily just bought VYM instead of 4 shares of SCHD, and this had been fine. But
I'm curious how that one. Remember that one project you did when you rolled?
Oh
some
yeah,
of the
maybe we'll roll that one back because I bought them. I have them side by side. I think I did it in August of 2022. I think. Yeah, I'll have to dust that one off. What I was going to compare SCHD as to if you think about it from like a baseball, like I'll use my baseball analysis here. Moneyball's the famous piece of it, where you have a team that's like, this is kind of how I view SCHD. You have Moneyball is where the Oakland Athletics didn't have the large payrolls to compete with the teams that could just throw money at somebody. So they relied heavily on analytics. They relied heavily on finding the inefficiencies in the baseball field, they're in the market to make them to support a competitive team. Some years the analytics worked very well, and the Oakland Athletics were playoff teams. Same thing with the Guardians and the Indians. Some years it worked well for the Indians. They signed the right people, they spent their money well. Some years the analytics don't work and they miss the playoffs. And I think that's what you're kind of seeing with SCHD. They had that run up in the late 2010s, early 2020s, where it was just firing on all cylinders. When the broader market was doing well, the rebalancings were on fire. Now it's a little trickier. It's a little trickier to find the right funds to invest in because you're seeing dividend stocks are hit or miss in certain areas. Sometimes the dividend growth pops and sometimes it doesn't. Last year's rebalancing was terrible for SCHD, and you're hoping that this year's is a little bit better. So that's how I view SCHD. It's more like a money ball. You have to hit on the analytics, and you have to make sure that when you do the rebalance, you're picking the right ones. And that's going to be interesting to see how it performs for SCHD.
Yeah, that's a very, very fun, analogy there. Guys, let us know what you guys think. VYM, SCHD, are you also kind of like us where, hey, both are solid, both are great? Personally, I think VYM is the better ETF for me.
Yeah.
But I'm not here to dog on SCHD shareholders.
Yeah, right now, SCHD is working for me, but I respect and I love all the VYM shareholders too, because all that matters is you're growing your assets, you're pushing yourself to reach financial freedom, and you're getting money off the sidelines into the market, no matter where you pick it. That's fine with us.
Exactly, guys. Remember, keep saving, keep investing. Let's get to financial freedom. Subscribe if you haven't, like the video, and Bert, you're either with us or you're against us. Jack, that was Bert and Lanny from the Dividend Diplomats over